You've sold your home, hooray! On today's show, learn how to save taxes when you make that sale. Then a strategy to align your values with your investments, and how to improve your health to enjoy your wealth. All this and more on today's episode of The Wealthy Life. Welcome to The Wealthy Life. It may be the biggest investment in your life. So if you own real estate, you may be subject to significant taxes when you sell. Chartered accountant Patrick Caffrey is with us to explain how to save taxes when selling real estate. Patrick, welcome to The Wealthy Life.
Thanks for being here.
So as a chartered accountant, you get to help people save taxes each and every day, don't you?
That's the best part of the job.
Well, I'm sure there's a lot of tax tips you have to share, but today we want to focus on real estate. So what are the tax implications when someone sells real estate?
For most Canadians, when you sell your primary home, there are no taxes to be paid.
That's a bonus?
That's a bonus. It's one of the best tax advantages we have in Canada. The exemption applies to you and your spouse, one property between both of you. And the rules have changed over the years. Prior to 1982, it was one property for each spouse. Prior to 1972, there was no capital gains tax. So if you've had a property for a long period of time, check with your accountant. You may have more factors to consider for that property when selling it.
You know, it's unfortunate that there's only one property allowed to be sold tax-free between a couple.
Yes.
Is it a disincentive for people to get married?
It could be. We'll
Because
have to take that.
Yeah, they stay apart and then they each get their own primary residence to
That's
sell.
true. That is true.
Well, more and more Canadians today, I think, are also looking at second properties.
Yes.
You know, maybe vacation properties. So what are the tax implications of that?
When you have a secondary property, it's important to note that the principal residence exemption may apply to both properties, so long as you ordinarily inhabit both of them. So
Hold on a second. So there's a way to maybe save taxes on both?
That's correct.
Okay, tell me more.
So you can only claim one property per year. That's the catch, so to speak. And generally for most Canadians, it'll be your primary home where it's most advantageous to claim the exemption because it's a larger home in an urban area.
Right.
However, that may not be the case for everyone. You may have a particularly large recreational property. As a result, if you're thinking of selling one of these properties, I would recommend speaking with your accountant ahead of time. Make sure you're taking full advantage of this exemption.
Okay, so you have to reside in the property to get the exemption, correct?
Correct.
So what do they consider residency? And we don't have to go through all the nitty-gritty, but what are some of the basic requirements?
The basic requirements are ordinary inhabitation. So on some kind of continuous and regular basis, you're living in that property, and it cannot be rented out. So it cannot be a property that rented out most of the year and you inhabit it for a small portion of the year.
Okay, so that rules out a lot of people who have a property that they maybe rent out on VRBO or Airbnb and then use it for personal use only occasionally. Yes. That wouldn't count.
That's
okay.
Correct.
But if I have two properties, so let's say I've got, you know, my home in the city and I've got a cottage in the country. What if I spend half my time in the city and half the time in the country?
That'll be a situation where both properties are eligible for this exemption, and you're going to want to decide which property it makes the most sense to allocate that exemption to.
Okay, so generally things like, what did I pay for the property? I guess essentially you want to know what is the gain on the property. So what did I pay for it? What's it worth when I'm going to sell it? And whatever has the largest gain or largest profit, that's where I want to try to use my exemption.
That's correct.
Now, how does the formula work for years in the property too? So if I am, you know, have my house in the city and I only use the cottage, you know, occasionally,
yes.
But then maybe 10 years go by and I swap and now I'm living in the country and no longer living in the city very often. Can I roll it over at that point in time? Is it a percentage of time?
It is a year-by-year choice, so you can choose one property per year. You don't have to choose the same property every year. So in the case you've just stated, it may be possible to have a portion of each property's gain exempted, depending on what makes the most sense for you.
And can you differentiate by years as well. So, and how do people keep track of that? So let me give you an example. If, let's say, recreation property happens to go through a hot real estate market and seems to go up in value, could I then say, geez, from 2015 to 2020, that's going to be my primary residence?
Yes, you have full ability to do that. You really only have to decide when you sell one of the properties. That's the point in time where you have to make a decision on which year is allocated to which property. Up until then, so long as you're keeping both properties eligible by living in them every year, you don't have to make a specific decision up until that point of sale.
Okay, so then good record keeping is going to be critically important, because how do you assess property values? What is a standard today so that you can make those decisions later?
Municipal assessments are one way to get an idea of your property's value. Talking with your local realtor can give you a good understanding of the market for your property. Those are the most common ways we've recommended to clients to get a valuation.
And they don't usually cost anything as opposed to an appraisal.
That's correct.
So I guess essentially people need to keep records, keep all your tax assessments, so you know what your property was worth. Along the way, keep track of what you paid for it, obviously, so that you can make those decisions later. So what's the one piece of advice you have for our viewers today?
I would say talk to your accountant before you're making any change to your property to save the most tax possible.
Patrick, fantastic to have you on the show. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Sybil.
Learn how you can reduce your environmental impact while investing after the break.
The Wealthy Life is brought to you by investment dealer Raymond James. Life well planned. See what a Raymond James advisor can do for you.
We're all looking to do our part to help the environment, but how do you reduce your environmental impact but not your returns? Sustainability advocate Martin Grosskopf is with us today to explain how you can do it. Martin, welcome to The Wealthy Life.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
You have been in the finance industry for about 2 decades now. Tell me a little bit about the role that you have today.
Sure. Well, I'm a portfolio manager and I manage a fund that focuses on sustainability. So I focus on companies that are creating products or services that are solutions to some of the sustainability challenges that we're facing today.
So what are some of those issues and what is sustainability investing?
Sure. Well, I mean, climate change is probably the one that most people are familiar with. Clearly, there's been significant pledges made by governments around the world to reduce carbon emissions. A lot of companies are trying to do that. But how do you create solutions? How do you create, the solutions to a problem that really has been going on for decades? And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to find the companies that are innovative, that offer something to allow us to make those targets that are out there.
So do you see this as a passing fad, or is this here to stay? Has it been here for a while?
Well, it's been here for a while, but you had mentioned 2 decades. So for a long time, it was certainly in the, I'd say, niche area of the financial markets. And today, certainly, it's something that has become mainstream. I think many of the large pension funds, asset owners around the world recognize environmental issues as critical to their investment decision-making process. And so I think it's something that is front and center now for many investors around the world.
Do you see it driven more by the investor or by the business owner, or is it a combination?
Well, it's really both. I mean, I think it's corporations that want to do better, do the right thing, and also be profitable. I think it's consumers that are making those choices. They want to buy products that are more sustainable. And then there's always, the stick. If the carrot's not there, the government's there with the stick. And the stick is about regulation. Regulations are tightening around the world for so many issues that are important from an environmental standpoint.
So I remember at one point in time, I think there was a number of investors were just thinking, I'm going to invest responsibly because it's the right thing to do, and they weren't so concerned about rate of return. But I would say that the majority of investors want a positive rate of return. So can you have both?
Yeah, I don't have many investors that don't want both. So, I mean, that would be a fairly nice place to be, I suppose. But generally, our investors expect a competitive rate of return. but they also don't want to give up on the environmental impact that they are so interested in. So really, we're trying to do both. And I think that's always the challenge, and that's the opportunity too.
So you can have your cake and eat it too. That's good to hear. When it comes to stock picking, because that's part of your job, you're building portfolios. You're the one out there picking the different investments and the different sectors of the economy to invest in. What are you looking for?
Well, we're looking for companies that really will get a significant portion of their growth from the sustainability theme I was talking about. So it could be, I mentioned climate change, but think about transportation, the move to electric vehicles. That is really changing the entire industry within transportation. And so what we're trying to find are the companies whose growth will really benefit from that regulatory and consumer change towards electric vehicles. Or if it's in what we call the circular economy. How do you take plastics out of the environment? How do you design products to prevent them from, ending up in the oceans? And I think that's a big opportunity. So we look at companies whose technologies help to do that.
That's amazing. And not only the recycling of plastics, but it's even avoiding plastics altogether. And so you think paper straws, for example, that is replacing plastic straws. And maybe people just won't have straws anymore. So as an investor, as a stock picker, those are the types of things that you would look for.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, straws it's a simple example. Everybody knows what we're talking about, but the challenge is huge, to take that out of our packaged product environment, and to come up with solutions that don't use straws. I mean, it's a real challenge for industry, but there's companies that are doing that, whether it's, biomaterials that are replacing that plastic, or whether it's the use of alternatives, like, as you mentioned, paper, or if you can design it right out of the product in the first place, so you're not using it. So all of those are interesting.
So then once you figure out, a general theme that makes sense to invest in, maybe it's a sector, maybe it's a region, but then how do you narrow it down to know what company is going to succeed and make you money in that area?
That's always a challenge. We can find companies that are exposed, but which are the ones that really are going to have a strong financial return? So the exposure is part of it. I mean, are they in the right theme? Is that theme improving in terms of its trajectory? And then is the company doing the right things, from either the product standpoint or from a profitability standpoint? Are its margins improving? Is the growth rate, the cash flow improving? And if we find that confluence of factors, essentially that's what makes an exciting opportunity and investment for us. So, we're fairly concentrated. We're looking for, probably around 50 names to hold. We tend to hold them for a long period of time. And so, it's really identifying those unique opportunities that takes a lot of our effort.
Well, thank you, Martin. And for those of you out there who want to have a check-in on your own portfolio and see if it is sustainable, contact your financial advisor. Martin, thanks for being with us today.
Great, thank you.
What good is your wealth if you don't have your health? Up next, we'll cover tips to living a truly healthy life.
The Wealthy Life is brought to you by investment dealer Raymond James. Life well planned. See what a Raymond James advisor can do for you.
What good is your wealth if you don't have your health? With us today is naturopath Dr. Kristen Bovee to share her top tips for your best health so that you can truly enjoy your wealth. Dr. Bovee, it's great to have you here today.
Thank you for having me.
So one thing I want to clarify right out of the gate, because there's a lot of misconceptions over this. What is the difference between a naturopathic physician and a general practitioner, or what should people know about a naturopathic physician?
So naturopathic physicians are licensed healthcare providers. They're different from your regular medical doctor. We have different training in terms of similar training and different training, but mostly when you come and see a naturopathic doctor, we're here to help you with your lifestyle, dietary choices, and to help your body work with itself to come to the best wellness that it can be.
Well, that always sounds great. And I find personally in my experiences, because I've been to both and I go to both on a regular basis, and working in harmony with one another is ideal. But I also like getting to the source, The worst thing for me is if you've got an ailment and you go and get a prescription to fix it, just covers it. It just masks the symptom. It doesn't get to the root cause of it. Whereas I like the approach of what's the cause, getting deep.
Correct. That's what naturopathic physicians do really well, is to, look at the puzzle and try to create a good reasoning as to why the body is doing what it's doing and help to correct that.
So what can people do to get healthier or stay really healthy for a long period of time?
Well, some of the more fundamental things is, looking at managing your stress. That's really
easier said than done.
True enough. Getting restorative sleep. There's a difference between going to sleep and getting restorative sleep.
So what's restorative sleep?
Restorative sleep is that type of sleep that you can get into that your body does the most healing. Our bodies need to take the time and have enough sleep to get into those deeper levels of sleep where we're producing certain hormones that allow our tissue to regenerate.
So the average person who says that, oh, I only need 6 hours sleep a night, is that true?
Well, for some people that's okay. It really depends on how your health is. There's different ways of measuring that, but most people know when they feel well rested. And if you're waking and feeling tired still, there's obviously something wrong, even if you are having 8 to 10 hours of sleep.
So we need to manage stress, we need to get restorative sleep. What are some of the other things?
Well, diet, obviously, eating well, eating a balanced diet. I always recommend that eating organic or as much as you can, eating locally, really important, and eating in season. If we eat locally, we get foods that are higher in nutrients. Those nutrients that are found in our foods aren't as broken down. And so the quality of our food is much better.
See, I don't think many people think of that, although maybe more and more people are. But if I hear you right, if we are eating food that's been heavily processed or maybe imported from large distances away, some of that nutrient value is lost.
Absolutely.
Okay, and we need those nutrients to be healthy.
That's right.
So how do we know if we're getting enough nutrients in our diet?
That's a good question. We can't go and just test all our vitamins, but there are certain markers and certain things that the body will start to do that give us signs that things need to be paid attention to. Our digestive tract is super important in that when we're eating our food, we're not just what we eat, we are what we absorb. So if you're having any digestive issues, you're more likely malnourished, even though you might be eating a really great diet.
And so what do digestive issues look like from a symptoms perspective for the average person?
Well, it can be something simple as bloating or reflux, pain,
So if something's not
irregularities.
feeling right, it's time to do a check and maybe you're not getting all the nutrients you need.
Absolutely, yeah.
So how can people get nutrients then? If they're not getting enough through their regular diet, what do you suggest?
That's when we step into doing the supplementation, considering that realm. You don't want to have to rely on supplements to be healthy, but there is a time and a place where, if we are depleted or our digestive tract has a harder time in absorbing certain nutrients, we try to correct that as naturopathic doctors, help the patient to correct that. But in the meantime, supplementation might be the only way to, say, get your iron levels up quickly.
What's the best way to take a supplement then? Because not all supplements are absorbed either.
No, that's true. So when a patient comes to me and we talk about supplementation, liquid forms are probably the most easiest absorbed. Powders are the next, capsules. I usually think that tablets, I recommend not to avoid tablets. Those are going to be the hardest to break down for a compromised digestive tract.
Wow, this is all really good information to know, and we're already out of time. So, for viewers out there, I would suggest make an appointment with your naturopathic physician to get a wellness checkup and find out the answers to these questions. Kristen, it's been so great having you on the show today.
Thank you, Sybil.
And when we return, find out how you can deduct the interest on your mortgage. Welcome back. Thanks for your emails, tweets, and messages. Today's question is from Yasmin. Dear Sybil, I have a healthy investment portfolio, but also have a mortgage on my home. I've heard I might be able to deduct the interest on my mortgage. Is that correct? How can I do this? Yasmin, the short answer is you might be able to. In your case, I think yes. Typically, Revenue Canada allows people to deduct interest on monies borrowed for the purpose of generating taxable income. That's the most important part here. You need to generate taxable income in order for Revenue Canada to allow you to deduct the expense. So typically what you would do is liquidate your investment portfolio, pay off your mortgage, then re-advance the mortgage back on the same day or within a couple of days, and reinvest back into your investment portfolio. The reason we've done that is now the paper trail shows that you have borrowed money for the purpose of investing, as opposed to borrowing money to buy a home, which does not generate taxable income. So as long as you meet those criteria, yes, you're able to deduct the interest on your mortgage payments. A couple of things to keep in mind. It has to be dividend and interest income. It can't be capital gain income. You may earn capital gains in addition to your interest and dividends, but it has to be primarily interest and dividends. The other thing to consider, rate of return needs to be higher than the interest rate on your loan. A few more details to consider. Talk to your financial advisor to find out more. And that wraps up this edition of The Wealthy Life, helping you make smart financial decisions. Join the Wealthy Life Club by becoming a member at thewealthylife.com. You'll get access to everything you need to live your wealthy life.